Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. Very good to be back with you all as SpaceX is taking a third try at launching this Falcon 9 that you see before you. Sitting there at Launch Complex 39A, a Falcon 9 rocket, preparing to launch the Starlink 12-17 mission. 21 Starlink V2 mini satellites on board, 13 of which feature direct-to-cell capabilities. Appreciate all of you for being with us again this evening, as hopefully the third time proves to be the charm. It's also good to be back with you after making my way back to Florida from what was a very busy but fantastic 40th Space Symposium in Colorado Springs. Met with lots of wonderful folks, had the opportunity to do quite a number of interviews, and be sure to subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, ring that bell, and that way you'll be alerted when our future videos coming from Space Symposium and otherwise get published here on YouTube. Want to thank, as we're starting the broadcast here, the 1,300 plus of you who are with us live this evening. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream. Allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also want to thank our moderators for hanging out with us this evening. Thanks to Aussie Space Girl, who might be holding it down solo right now, just cruising the live chat. If any of the other mods are popping in tonight, though, be sure to give them a big old hello as we cruise on through the countdown. You can help make Stephanie's job a little bit easier by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you refrain from using all caps as well as delving into overt politics. Please convert in English so that Stephanie and our other mods can do their work appropriately and understand what's going on in the live chat. And also make sure to respect everyone that you're encountering here. Remember, everyone's launch tonight could be their first time seeing rocket launch live, and that comes with a number of questions about the whole process. So if you see someone ask a question that you may know the answer to, just go ahead and extend them the same courtesy that you would have liked extended to you the very first time you watched a launch live. I want to thank our wonderful channel members here in our YouTube community who make these live launch opportunities possible, as well as on the ground reporting as we just wrapped up in Colorado. So thanks to folks like Kyle M, Teresa, Ollie O, Well-Reasoned, Superhawk, Yazada, Sulfur for Lunch, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to our member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our member-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of the live launch liftoff moments from here at the Cape in 4K. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings-on in the realm of space or spaceflight, or just want to offer a little support this evening, you can follow the path blazed by the astronomers tonight by using our YouTube super chat feature. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the countdown, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. So I want to thank the astronomers, one of our wonderful channel members, for saying, hey, space friends, third time's a charm, right? Thanks to the staff and mods of Spaceflight Now. And Grandpa Jim Pondu, been with us 9 months now as a channel member at the pad leader level. Appreciate that, Jim. Good to see you with us again this evening. Who says, let's light this candle. And certainly, fingers crossed. The fish are jumping there in the turn basin here at the Kennedy Space Center press site, and we are just about 53.5 minutes away from hopefully seeing this Falcon 9 rocket fly is to take a look a little bit closer to the pad. You can see some venting there from the strong back, which is the large white structure that runs parallel to the Falcon 9 rocket. Usually a good sign that SpaceX is preparing things at the pad for the start of fueling. This is not the big vent, which we'll see a little bit later on as the feed lines are being fully conditioned prior to second stage liquid oxygen load, but this is a typical preload chill that we've been seeing here at pad 39A for some time, broadly speaking. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast this evening, as is Mr. John Pisani, who's also standing by ready to do some photography of this launch, assuming it is able to leave the ground this evening. If you're not following the rest of our photography team, now's a great time to do so while their handles are up here on the screen. You can find Adam, who is going to be shooting and tracking the Falcon 9 rocket at ABurnNYC on X. Michael Kane, shooting from over in the Orlando area at MD Kane Jr. John is at John Pisani Photo. While you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. And if you yourself are not on social media site X, formerly Twitter, you can also find us on Facebook, Threads, and Blue Sky. I want to thank channel member Mrs. Ed3, marking 10 months with us as a channel member at the pad leader level. Some very kind words saying, my favorite YouTube channel. Thank you, Mrs. Ed. With just about 51 minutes left to go before the hopeful launch of this Falcon 9 rocket, let's talk about the countdown timeline. But before we do, just want to make a note to say that right now SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket at 8:53 p.m. Eastern, 00:53 UTC. As those who have been with us for the previous two launch attempts of this mission, this is the start of the window and not the end. So SpaceX has backup opportunities for this particular launch attempt that extend out until 12:42 a.m. Eastern. That's assuming they haven't begun fueling the Falcon 9 rocket. Once tanking is underway, SpaceX is locking into that chosen T0 liftoff time or launch attempt. So as we are hopefully continuing to march toward that point in time with just about 50 minutes on the clock, let's take a look at what still lies ahead in this countdown timeline of ours. Around the T-minus 38-minute mark is when the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load for today's operation. SpaceX does its readiness poll electronically, so if it feels like it's in a good position to do so, this can come a little bit earlier. But generally speaking, T-minus 38 minutes is when that gets underway. Once the go-ahead for prop load is given, fueling starts at the T-minus 35-minute mark with a loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes, they begin to load a cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. They'll do the same on the second stage a few minutes afterwards. The helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during the flight. T-minus 23 minutes, the second stage RP-1 loading concludes. T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process gets underway. That is visually manifested by the presence of the so-called big vent. It's when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. We'll start to see the big vent emanating from where you're seeing a little bit of venting right now there at the strong back. Second stage liquid oxygen load will begin at the 16-minute mark. Moving right along, T minus 7 minutes is when the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines begins. That's when SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and that'll help protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract process begin. It starts with the clamp arms, which are just beneath the payload fairings, open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise known as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stays in that position until liftoff, at which point they'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call out that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is being handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. And of course, if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Coming up once again at 8:53 p.m. Eastern, 00:53 UTC, or in T minus 46 minutes and 40 seconds. As you can see, the American flag in this shot blowing a bit, but the weather coming into tonight's launch opportunity looking far more ideal than it did in the previous night. Launch weather officers with the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a greater than 95% chance for favorable weather for today's launch. Liftoff winds were forecast to trend between 12 and 17 miles per hour. The cold front that passed during yesterday's window has significantly improved weather here on Florida's Space Coast, where we've got some high pressure and dry air hanging out here on the Atlantic side of Florida, which creates good launch conditions not only for today's launch opportunity, but for a couple things. Either if there's another technical issue that prevents the launch tonight and they need to go to the backup opportunity, the weather looks just as good, but also good weather conditions for the planned launch of SpaceX's other Falcon 9 rocket, getting ready to support the Starlink 6-73 mission, which is set to lift off tomorrow evening. That's looking at a launch time of 9:59 p.m. Eastern, 1:59 UTC. 27 Starlinks on board that particular flight, and that'll actually be the 27th launch of that first stage booster supporting that mission. That'll be the flight of B-1067, supporting tomorrow night's Starlink launch. The current Falcon booster flight leader continues to cement its position, assuming a good launch and a good landing, of course. Tonight's Falcon first stage booster, B-1083, will be flying for a 10th time tonight. Most recently, we saw it in action in support of the launch of Intuitive Machines' IM-2 mission, which sent the Athena Nova Sea lander on its way to the moon for a landing attempt on the South Pole. It did land, but it landed off kilter and was unable to complete its full mission. Intuitive Machines looking at another launch opportunity for its IM-3 mission no earlier than, I believe, the fourth quarter of this year is what they're currently targeting. So either late 2025 or perhaps early 2026 for that mission. In support of this launch operation tonight, the Brevard County Emergency Operations Center has activated, as they do for all launch attempts from here on the East Coast and either the Cape or the Kennedy Space Center. Brevard DOC, one of the busiest DOCs in the country because of the fact that they activate for all launch and launch related activities like a wet dress rehearsal or a hot fire. That coupled with the fact that we are here in Florida on the Atlantic side, and we are no stranger to hurricanes and other natural disaster impacts like some spin-up tornadoes. Just under 35 minutes here. Assuming everything is going smoothly for SpaceX, tanking of the Falcon 9 rocket should now be underway. Just about 33 minutes to go as the clock currently stands. At this point, or in the next minute or two, we should be starting to see some signs of tanking, given that there's fortunately fairly little heat distortion between us and the Falcon 9 rocket there. What we're watching for is, if you see near the base, the first stage, in the lettering of SpaceX, just beneath the X, there's a change in gradient. And you see where it becomes a slightly darker shade of gray. Right around that area, just beneath that X in SpaceX, is where we should start to see a frost line form, which it does look like. Starting to see some signs of that. Yep. It looks like we've got some signs of prop load underway, which means that SpaceX is committing to a launch attempt at 8:53 p.m. Eastern. Just about 29 minutes to go before the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. For those who may just be joining us now, SpaceX is currently tanking its launch vehicle there at Launch Complex 39A. RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene currently flowing on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen filling the Falcon 9's first stage LOX tank. At this point, SpaceX is also loading a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels on the first stage. The same will happen on the second stage coming up here in just a few minutes. Want to draw your attention to a wonderful view that we have of the full moon, thanks to our friend Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions. Of course, tonight is also known as the pink moon. Pink moon named after the pink wildflowers that bloom in spring. Another term you may have heard floating around is that this is being called a micromoon. Reason being that the moon is at its farthest point from Earth in its orbit. And so when you're looking at the moon with your naked eye, it may appear smaller than usual if you step outside and look up with your own eyes. In talking about the moon, I'll make reference to one of the things that we were up to while at Space Symposium this year. This was just about a year since NASA at the Johnson Space Center announced the three companies that were vying for a task order in order to be chosen by NASA for the Lunar Terrain Vehicle demonstration mission, which will be conducted in the run-up to the Artemis 5 mission. And so all three of the companies, Intuitive Machines, Lunar Outpost, and Venturi Astrolab, all had their prototypes of their lunar terrain vehicles at Space Symposium. And we had the chance to talk with each of the companies about their design, some of the work that's been done on them, and what the path forward will look like, even if they don't happen to win the LTV task order from NASA. So had some great conversations. Looking forward to sharing more from that reporting with you in the days and weeks to come. So that's just a little tease, since we have a great visual of the moon courtesy of our friend Pete to talk with you about. Again, big thanks to our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube who make live and on the ground launch up or reporting opportunities like that possible. So thanks to all of you who are in our channel member community, and big thanks to those who are able to support at the higher levels, who help further support some more extensive reporting, like being able to travel to Colorado Springs for Space Symposium, and also for making it possible to keep the basic levels of membership at a lower cost. One quick and free way that you can help support the channel here tonight is just by clicking the like button. So to the 5,300 plus of you who are watching with us live, first off, thanks for being with us. And secondly, if you haven't already done so, clicking that like button does help a whole heck of a lot. Allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and bring this live coverage to more folks as we continue on through the count. Also want to wish everyone here a very happy International Day of Human Spaceflight, otherwise known as Yuri's Day. So I know there are a number of folks that are celebrating here in the United States as well as elsewhere around the world. This is the anniversary of the first time that humans went to space, of course, referring to cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin. This also happens to be the anniversary of the first space shuttle launch, STS-1, liftoff of Shuttle Columbia back on April 12th of 1981. Was on orbit for just a couple of days, returning back to Earth on April 14th. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank a few folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Rocket Lady Elizabeth for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Elizabeth, one of our wonderful channel members. Thanks to Lloyd Green as well for a $2 super chat. Channel member Lloyd, thank you. Kevin Schreiber, another channel member with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Kevin, for your support. He says, light the fuse and get her done. Kells with a $5 super chat. Good to see you this evening. James Castile with a $12 super chat. Thank you, James, who says, go SpaceX, go spaceflight now, go Micro Pink Moon. And channel member Glenn A, marking 18 months with us as a channel member at the pod leader level, says, let's launch this baby. Fingers crossed, my friends, fingers crossed. As we're coming up on the start of the so-called big vent, as SpaceX conditions the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen load, let's go ahead and take a second and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket's going to be flying once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9, as part of the Group 12 batch of Starlink satellites, will follow the same trajectory. Once the rocket leaves the pad at Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center, it will fly in a southeasterly trajectory with the first stage booster B-1083 following that red arc there, with a planned touchdown on the drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. If successful tonight, this will be the 104th booster landing for that particular drone ship and the 430th Falcon booster landing to date. SpaceX is, of course, concerned with not only reusing its Falcon first stage boosters, but also the payload fairings. Following fairing separation, the payload fairing halves will splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. As of a presentation made in early 2024, SpaceX says it saves about $6 million per recovery effort. And once down in the waters, they'll be brought aboard one of the recovery vessels and then brought back into Port Canaveral, turned over to the Hangar X site, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. Another 21 minutes to go now at this point. We're coming up on the start of the so-called big vent here in about 30 seconds. And there you see the big vent starting. Right on time here at pad 39A, which actually here at pad 39A, it starts at T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds. It's 20 minutes and 20 seconds over at pad 40 and pad 4 East over at Vandenberg. This venting will last until roughly T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds. And once it tapers off, we'll see second stage LOX load begin at the 16-minute mark. Now, less than 16 and a half minutes ago, you see the big vent has wrapped up. SpaceX is preparing to start loading liquid oxygen now on board the Falcon 9's second stage, starting in about 10 seconds. Now, just about 14 and a half minutes to go before the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Before we get there, though, I want to talk about where this booster has been, since it'll be making its 10th flight to space and back. Let's talk about the history so far of B-1083. It first began its launch career back on March 4th of last year with a flight of Crew 8 who headed up to the International Space Station on board the Crew Dragon spacecraft named Endeavour. That was followed up by a pair of Starlink missions. You had Starlink 6-48 on April 10th and Starlink 6-56 on May 8th. The fourth flight of this booster supported the commercial astronaut mission dubbed Polaris Dawn that lifted off on September 10th. This free flyer mission was the second flight to space and back for Jared Isaacman, and the first for his three crewmates, Kid Petit, Sarah Gillis, and Anna Menon. Of course, we just recently saw Jared Isaacman up on Capitol Hill in front of the Senate Commerce Committee as he's been nominated to be the next NASA administrator. Now that he's had his confirmation hearing, it'll go before a vote of that committee, and if it's voted out of committee, it would go in front of the full Senate for a vote. We've seen the timing of these confirmation hearings and process to getting confirmed take quite a while. Sometimes it takes not so long, so we'll have to wait and see how long it might take for his confirmation process to continue on. Continuing on with this booster's history, next flight was another trip up to the International Space Station supporting the Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS-31 mission. That sent thousands of pounds of science supplies to the ISS back on November 5th. Flight number 6 was the Starlink 6-65 mission on November 30th. That was followed by the launch of 4 communication satellites for Astronis on its From One to Many mission back on December 29th. Flight number 8 was the launch of 21 Starlink satellites on the Starlink 13-1 mission, and most recently was the IM-2 mission, which we mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, the launch of a Nova C-class lander named Athena, or Addie for short, headed up to the moon's south pole, where it still, of course, currently rests. And coming up here in about 11 and a half minutes, assuming all continues to go well with the count, we'll see the launch of the next batch of Starlink V2 mini satellites. Among those Starlinks on board this Falcon 9 rocket are 13 that feature direct-to-cell capabilities. So far to date, SpaceX has sent more than 550 of these DTC Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. Tonight's launch will be the 28th flight of a Falcon 9 rocket with Starlink satellites on board. And just this past Thursday, SpaceX's Vice President of Starlink Engineering, Michael Nichols, announced that the service was now active in Japan, the direct-to-cell service, that is, in partnership with Japanese telecommunication operator KDDI, which manages the brand O or AU. Just under 10 minutes. Taking a look at our live chat here. First off, I want to thank the 13,000 plus of you who are watching with us live this evening. If you haven't already done so, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage tonight. Also want to thank some folks in the live chat for your support individually. Chapeasy Official, the very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate that. Who's shouting out space. And a shout out to Jen for a $5 super chat saying, let's go for launch. Here's hoping. Just under 9 minutes to go. Glenn Rubel with a $15 super chat. Thank you, Glenn, who says great work. Never gets old. The New Mexico Kid with a $5 super chat. Thank you, New Mexico Kid. One of our channel members, Meg McElroy, with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Meg. Good to see you this evening. He says, let's go Starlink 12-17. Go Falcon 9. Yay, Spaceflight Now family. Monkey Tree Rob with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Rob. Who says, a beautiful night for a launch here on Lake Fairview in Orlando. Extra bonus, seeing this full moon paired up. Yeah, big ups to P. Carson's for views of the full moon tonight. Captain Action, back in action, gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that generosity. And to our newest gifted channel member, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Captain Action in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month you were just gifted. And a thank you to one of my now favorite YouTube handles, Airplanes on a Stick, with a $2 super chat saying Spaceflight Now is the best. Also, looks like there were some gifted memberships that somehow cruised past or didn't show up on my end initially. Thanks to Beverly Knuckles for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships, and to Stephen Olive for gifting 5. So to our 15 newest gifted channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And be sure to thank Stephen and Beverly in the live chat if you haven't already. Speaking of gifted channel members, your channel memberships, I want to thank Wolverine Warlord for also gifting 10 as well. Thank you, Wolverine. Appreciate you growing the community. And as SpaceX begins to chill the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket there by flowing some liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, I want to welcome in our 10 newest gifted channel members. And thanks to Goku for being with us now for 5 months. It's going to be a beautiful launch view from the West Coast. I'm assuming you mean the west coast of Florida, not the western coast of the United States, because it might be a little too difficult to see this launch from all the way out in California or Oregon. 6.5 minutes to go here before the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. Coming up in about 20 seconds, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. We should also be getting mission audio and pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket coming in from SpaceX here in the next minute, minute and a half or so.
Strong back recheck has started.
With just about 4 minutes to go before the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, as you can see, the strong back is about to pull back away from the Falcon 9 rocket there. Just as a quick bit of housekeeping here, you can see the clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, different from what you're looking at down the center of the big box from SpaceX. Reason being, our clock is in real time. What's coming in from SpaceX is on a slight delay. So as long as we have ground level tracking views of the Falcon 9 rocket, we'll be making those callouts based on the real time clock until we're only reliant on the SpaceX onboard camera views. Now, 3 minutes to go. The Falcon 9's first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And with that good call from SpaceX, we're awaiting something very similar for the second stage liquid oxygen tank. In real time, we're about 20 seconds away from second stage LOX load being complete, at which point the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Good call from SpaceX. What you're seeing now are the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX purges any remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad. And as we are just about a
Ground
minute,
gas closeouts.
Minute to go before liftoff. We're going to come back to the live chat on the other side of liftoff. But for now, we'll keep our eyes and energy focused on the Falcon 9 for the remaining minute of the count. Momentarily, we should hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And with that call, we're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their final go for launch, which per the SpaceX feed should be in the next few seconds.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that, we are less than 30 seconds away in real time from the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Complex 39A. "15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff with the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 12-17 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. We're just a little past a minute into flight. Falcon 9 approaching max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. As the rocket passes through max Q and throttles back up, we're coming up on a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation, and then second stage engine start. Good call from SpaceX. They are thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage prior to its ignition. Now 2 minutes into flight. Less than 10 seconds to MECO. MECO. Stage separation. And second stage engine start.
Impact ignition.
And there you see those events coming from the SpaceX onboard cameras now. Fairing separation is coming up right now in real time. There you see those payload fairings reflecting against the glow of the Merlin engine on the second stage. And a nice view of orbital sunset from the Falcon boosters onboard cameras.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Good call there. You can see the difference between those direct-to-cell version of the Starlink satellites near the top of the stack. those bursts that you're seeing between the grid fins on the Falcon 9 first stage booster there in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, those are the cold gas thrusters SpaceX is using to help orient the Falcon first stage as it positions itself for a landing attempt on the drone ship called a shortfall gravitas. Falcon booster continuing to climb at this point in the flight. Hasn't quite reached its apogee just yet. Maybe close to doing so, right about 113 kilometers now in altitude. Appears 113 is our apogee this evening. Coming up on 5 minutes into this mission, the first stage entry burn set to begin in just about a minute now. Some great tracking work by our team tonight. Seeing a lot of comments in live chat that it was a very clear night from all your vantage points around Sebastian, Central Florida. Even a good view from the beach up in Jacksonville. It's nice to hear. Less than 30 seconds to go before the start of that entry burn. SpaceX will use 3 of the engines on the booster stage to begin to slow the vehicle down. Given the clarity tonight, we may be able to catch that entry burn for you with our tracking cameras. We're going to be making an effort to do so just now, as the entry burn is just underway. And it looks like Adam's got it, and so has Pete. Well done, gentlemen. This entry burn
Stage
lasts
1 entry burn startup.
about another 10 seconds or
Stage 1
less.
FTS has saved.
That call you just heard from SpaceX regarding the FTS, that is the flight termination system, no longer needed at this stage in flight for the booster.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
And with the conclusion of the entry burn from the onboard cameras now as well, we are cruising towards the start of the first stage landing
Stage
burn,
2 FTS has saved.
which should begin in just about a minute per the SpaceX clock.
Stage 1 transonic.
First stage traveling below the speed of sound now. Less than 20 seconds away from the start of the landing burn. Also worth noting that with this launch having slipped now a couple of times
Stage
in the
1 landing burn.
good call, it started landing burn.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Good first stage landing. That marked the 430th successful Falcon booster landing to date.
MVAC shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Good call for nominal orbit insertion following the shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine. At this point, the upper stage will enter into a coast phase where it will cruise until about T plus 53 minutes and 57 seconds. There will be a brief 2-second burn on that second stage engine, helping to circularize the orbit. And then the Starlink satellites will be deployed at about T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 6 seconds post liftoff. With that successful landing of the first stage booster and a good liftoff to begin, that marked the conclusion of the 400th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. Big milestone in recovery for SpaceX. And with this mission well on its way, let's go ahead and take a moment to check in with our mission stats as they currently stand. This flight to space and back was the 10th mission for Falcon 9 first stage booster B1083. This was the 459th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 42nd of the year so far. As mentioned, this was the 400th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was the 139th SpaceX orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 107th from Pad 39A for SpaceX, and the 201st overall orbital launch from Pad 39A. Taking a look at the bar chart here, here's where SpaceX stands so far in 2025 as compared to years past. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 104th landing of a booster successfully on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. That marked the 343rd SpaceX drone ship landing and the 430th overall SpaceX booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 29th orbital flight from the Sunshine State, the 43rd launch from U.S. soil, the 48th launch from U.S. Rocket Company, and the 75th orbital launch attempt around the world. Still just one launch failure on the year so far, and here is where our pie chart currently stands. Mentioned there have been so far 29 orbital launches from Florida so far, getting ready to make that number 30 coming up tomorrow night, if all goes well, as SpaceX targets the next Starlink launch from Pad 40, its workhorse launch pad over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That mission, dubbed Starlink 6-73, getting ready to lift off, if all goes well, at the start of the launch window that opens up at 9:59 p.m. Eastern, 01:59 UTC. Before we let you go, want to thank a few more folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Manish Rao for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Manish, saying go SpaceX and NASA. Just as a quick note for everyone that NASA was not directly involved in this launch, but it was launching from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. So slight tie-in there, but predominantly this was a SpaceX mostly launch. Channel member Goku, this coming in from before liftoff. Been a member now for 5 months with us at the PAL leader level, saying going to be a beautiful launch from the West Coast. Captain KC joining us with channel membership at the PAL leader level. Wolverine Warlord with a $10 super chat saying woohoo. Willie's back in the saddle. Nice to see you back. You didn't miss much yesterday. And yeah, I feel bad for the team who is here in Florida, having spun up quite a number of times over the past week while I was in Colorado, and just be snuffed by weather and other technical issues. So Very glad that got this launch off tonight. E. McCoy with a $5 super chat. Thank you, E. KC Security Superfan, $5 super chat saying go SpaceX, go Falcon 9. Manish Rao with a $5 super chat saying we were watching live from the hotel room in Merritt Island. Hopefully we can see something in the sky. Fingers crossed. You've got the good view you were hoping for. M. Teresa, marking 12 months with us at the pad leader level, saying hi, Troop 811 in Jupiter. Enjoy the launch. Hello to all of you in, I'm assuming, Boy Scout Troop 811, maybe Girl Scouts. Either way, glad you could be with us for launch coverage tonight. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. KC, channel member, with a $10 super chat. Thank you, KC. And to Psychonaut69 for a $2 super chat. Psychonaut rejoins with channel membership at the mission specialist level. Appreciate that, Psychonaut, after gifting a membership. Thanks for the support and for the generosity. And Janine De La Sera with a $2 super chat saying, hi, everyone. Awesome job. So beautiful. And with that, my friends, we are going to go ahead and close things out. Actually, YouTube must be doing some strange things because I'm seeing some super chats that weren't popping up in the normal way, but I'm now seeing them. So thanks to Chuck Close for a very generous $20 super chat. Good to see you again this evening, Chuck. And to Mitchell Wilbur for also a very generous $20 super chat, who says, finally, perfect tonight for launch in Vero Beach. And I think I got them all. Does appear so. Okay. So with that, want to thank our friend Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions for supporting our launch coverage tonight. A big thanks to Aussie Space Girl for holding it down in the live chat as our moderator this evening. Thanks to our photography team of Michael Kane, Adam Bernstein, and John Pisani for all their support this evening. John hitting the buttons, pulling the levers as well. You can see the strong back is being brought up into the upright position as SpaceX works to turn around this launch pad for future launch operations. I want to thank our Spacefly Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast as well this evening. Looks like Carlos Santiago, the $10 super chat. Thank you, Carlos. And Psychonaut69 for one more $2 super chat, hitting right at the buzzer. And Rick Donner, one of our other moderators, also here with us this evening. And a good reminder for folks to head on over to our website, spaceflightnow.com. Click on the launch schedule tab. And that way you'll be kept apprised of all future launches coming up around the corner. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Once again, good to be back in the Sunshine State and with all of you. And remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.